And um, just one second. I teach English. I've been living in the UAE for the last 25 years, so I call UAE my second home. I'm really happy to be here. And before I start talking about myself and the topic, I would like to thank you guys for finding the time and effort to be here with us. This is going to be, I hope, this presentation will spark some interest in two very important topics. For if Going back to telling you a little bit about myself, I teach as English faculty at higher colleges of technology in the UAE. I have my master's degree in applied linguistics, and I've always been interested in the way languages work. So now that Yelena kindly offered me this platform to talk about culture and language, I'm going to jump right in. Just give me a second so I can share the screen with you guys.
Okay, let's start, right? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Is it okay to start? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Okay. Right. So I prepared a short presentation, but by no means it's something in depth. First of all, the main idea of this presentation, again, is just to get your interest, to spark discussion. That's what I aimed for. And if you then have interest in what you've heard, or like you are interested in the information given, then it will be up to you to research it more. As I said before, I live in the UAE, and I've been here for the 24 years now, over 15 years, more than I anticipated at the beginning. I've been teaching English in different schools at the university. So my classroom would typically have children or young adults from very different countries, continents, and they would all bring something to the classroom that would always be fascinating for me to see. And I started noticing things that I will get to in the later slides. But most importantly, I want to bring some theory. I won't bore you with a lot of reading for the slides. So, and then I'll support them with some questions, some examples from my own experience. And one more thing, if you feel like you have some thoughts to share or some reflections that this presentation triggers, feel free to share all of that in the chat. And maybe as I talk, you can jot down some interesting ideas that you might have. And then at the end of the presentation, we can go back to that and then we can discuss that. That would be great. But of course, it's optional. It's up to you how you want to go about it. This is what usually a classroom in the UAE would look like. So we would have young Emirati students. In the past, it used to be only Emirati men or some female students would mix, and then there will be a co-ed classroom where there will be majority of male students and one or two female students. I thought it would be interesting to show you what it looks like. And that's the university. That's usually how it looks like. There are lots of pictures of sheikhs, and I'm sure if you've been to the UAE, you've noticed that yourself. So first of all, I want to start with a few quotes, and you can read them yourself, but my favorite one is about language and culture making a living organism. And I can't agree more. Without culture, Jiang says, language would be dead. Without language, culture would have no shape. So in my own words, I would say that whenever we have language and we teach language, I assume that most of the people who are here today, they're English language teachers. So I don't know how many of you have experience teaching students from different cultural backgrounds, but in the UAE, and today I'll be talking about my experience, people come with their own cultural norms, traditions, ways of living, ways of greeting people, things that they feel comfortable discussing with their classmates, teachers. So when we talk about culture and language, we have to understand that language's prime purpose is to be able to converse a meaning. When we use language, we primarily use it to describe something that surrounds us. It might be an experience, it might be a surrounding, and for us to do so, we need to use lexical forms and structures. And it's a lot of the time, it's neglected the way how we perceive language. So if you can just think of different ways to describe the same thing in different languages, we have, as teachers, we have to bring it on board when we teach language. Another thing here, it's again, it resonates with the previous slide where I'm talking about culture. It cannot exist if we take away language, and language cannot do the same without culture. So lately, all research agrees that culture can be considered as a fifth language skill, along with speaking, reading, listening, and writing. Why is it so? So you can go ahead and read the information on this slide. I want to, I don't know if we can put, if you have any ideas about that, please feel free to put it in the chat. But I want to support that idea of teaching same ideas in different, that comes from different cultures using different languages. For example, we all teach vocabulary. This is like a cornerstone in our ESL language teaching. So when we do vocabulary, most probably you probably introduce the words at the beginning of the week. Then you ask students to write some sentences with it. You write them to learn the spelling. And then on Thursday, you have your spelling test. And then you proceed in this manner. And there is nothing wrong with that. But if you pause for a second and think, let's say we're talking about, and my example here is the word roof. So pause for a second and think of what schemata or what pre-existing knowledge exists or pops up in your mind when I say roof. What is it? What idea can you communicate, like, which goes like almost like phraseological phrase? Like, I will use Yelena, if you don't mind. Yelena, if I say roof, what comes to your mind? What kind of roof? What? And I, Jerem, if you don't mind as well.
Oh, idioms.
Just without thinking. First associations, what would it be?
It's something flat and gray in English.
Flat and gray. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Right. Can you think of specific shape?
No.
No.
No, it's
Just flat.
Yeah, it's just gray.
Okay.
Yeah.
Igrim, it's probably something
Triangular in English for sure. I just imagine those suburban American houses. So yeah, having triangular roofs.
Right. So see, the association that we have with these three people, for me, it would be, as a Chechen speaker, I would probably picture a red tiled pitched roof, which is triangular as well, because that's what we had in Chechnya. And again, like, it reinforces this idea, language. So when I'm teaching word roof, it's important for me to see what is it for the language, for the different language speakers that is associated with this word. So if you look here, this is Jordan, and I think Lebanon and Algeria, they would probably have this kind of image in their head. And you could think that it's trivial, it's not important. But then when you go with the students and you develop their language skills and you ask them to write essays, to write in detailed description of something, it's important to know what words, what are they surrounded with? Why their experience matters as much as mine. So there is no one way, and that's the beauty of any languages. So that being acknowledged, being recognized for different ways of perceiving language, it has to be recognized. And that's what entails. If I go ahead and ask my students, what is it for you coming from Algeria, or what is it for me coming from Chechnya? That unites people. And then from there, you can take it when the students are more comfortable, they're acknowledged, respected, recognized for their background, for where they come from, then it's also important for them when they're learning another language. So there are lots of dimensions that you can play out from that one concept of recognizing that language forms might be different depending on where the students come from. Another example would be, again, speaking from a personal perspective as an ESL lecturer in the UAE. One shock for me was when I came around 20 years ago, and my first classroom, when I was teaching adults, there were some female students and they were veiled, so they were covered. And it was so difficult for me to read these facial cues, because usually you rely on them, especially when the students are at their early stages of language acquisition. And here I couldn't read any facial expressions. But then again, without any confrontational intentions, you just try to bring the students aboard. I think that was also a milestone in my understanding how I will be exposed as a teacher. When you are teaching students who come from different culture, they bring it with them to the classroom, and you have to deal with it. Because the most important thing, again, for students to feel comfortable, they don't want to be terrorized just because they don't look differently for religious or cultural reasons, for any reason that might be. They bring their norms because they're adults and they've already developed their cultural norms. And you have to adapt and always try to find what would be the common ground for you to relate to that student. And it's, I could see what difference it makes when you start asking questions and they're more than willing to explain to you why this happens and what it means to them. And then again, with respect and inclusion, you go from that place towards the successful learning of the language. Here is a lot of text, so I won't read it all. They're talking about when we teach different structures, like if you're a Russian speaker or you are a French speaker, you know how there are two ways of addressing people, which is ty and vy in Russian, right? So think for a moment, if you didn't know what cultural connotation goes along with these two forms, they would be just dead structures. You would know how to form them, but then it would carry very little use because you wouldn't know how to differentiate. So this is a clear example of how cultural norms and language, they are just bound up. They're so connected, and it's important to respect both. They're equally important when we teach language and when we learn language. So to avoid misunderstandings, it's important to emphasize cultural context of using this specific linguistic form. So whatever linguistic forms you're talking about, it's important to address the cultural connotation that goes with it. Here, language is the fifth language skill, and it's a framework within which language is used, and everything else comes along with that language. So here I just tried to list why is it important to learn, to address cultural issues in the classroom. And the most important one, of course, is considering culture as a language skill, its importance in developing intercultural competence for effective communication, especially now in the world that we live in. I think we need to find things that unite us rather than divide. So some ideas or strategies for effective ESL learning is cultural awareness. Again, students bring, at least in the UAE, recognizing culture's impact on language learning, and promoting respect and inclusivity. So when we're talking about how to make your classroom all include other people's differences and make it inclusive, I think one thing that worked very well for me, it's when you try to learn the names of the students, even if they sound really difficult. I mean, these kids are learning another language. So if you show them that effort, that you might not pronounce the name correctly, but you're trying, that trying goes a long way. And a lot of the time, students from, I think that student was from China. There was a group of students that we used to teach. It was a school level students, and they came up with the idea of replacing their names with, they call them English names. And I really oppose that idea, because imagine for a 10 or 12-year-old child, his name, it's part of his identity. Forget about even cultural identity. And for him, to explain to him that from now on, just because it's difficult for teachers to pronounce your name, you have to go with a completely different sound, like name that sounds so foreign. I think it was, so we talked with the parents and we left it, we said like, it's not necessary to do that. And I think that also helped to break that ice. And sometimes they would make fun of my pronunciation of their names, which also a good icebreaker. And my son, he has has a very old Chechen name, Boysrer, and it's very difficult to pronounce it. And now he is studying in Canada, and only now he tells me, I'm so glad that I didn't shorten it, I didn't replace it with anything else. And I actually like how unique it sounds. Again, that recognition, it goes a long way, and it's important for us to make that extra effort to learn these names if we can. If we are asking the students to learn so many new things, I think it's only fair for us to do the same. Okay, so here is another thing that's important for us. It's, as teachers, we have to be aware of the content. Does your content incorporate students' cultural background or not? So I was teaching UAE students, and the American, I think it was hardcore textbooks that we used. And there were a lot of text, reading texts, listening activities that would concentrate on like snowstorms, blizzards. So for my students, it was very difficult to relate to that. And of course, you can spark this interest. By no means, I don't mean that it's just because they weren't exposed to that, and it's a foreign concept to their own culture. But we need to be aware of that. And then we have to tweak the materials that you're teaching, and keep in mind that these students are surrounded by desert and camels, and for them to talk about snow or like, I don't know, snowstorms and everything else, all the hardships that might come out of that, we have to kind of prepare the students before we just, bombard them with questions for reading comprehension and writing in order for the students to be successful. So, and here I thought, like, even looking at these pictures, how different they are, it makes a better, it leads to a better understanding on what students sees and what we're supposed to explain to them to make it clear, more clear and easier. And to conclude, when we teach, we have to acknowledge culture as an important part of learning a foreign language. We have to look at we have to largely orient our content around the human side of it all, which to me is what it's all really about. Language on its own is just it's dead unless we make it alive. So try to think about it, maybe prepare any questions that you might have for the chat. And I would just let me leave you with this strong quote from Garrett, who says, if you discriminate against the language, then you discriminate against its speakers. Disrespect my language and you disrespect me. And I think that's what it encapsulates what I'm trying to say here in this short presentation. Okay, and here is some information about me. This is my Instagram. I'm not very active, unfortunately, but we thought would be a good idea to leave you some channels for follow-up. So that's all from me. And I think I'm handing it over to you, Yelena.
That's great, Alita. Actually, we had a huge discussion here in the chat. Yeah, and we got one answer about how Saya perceive the word truth. Yeah, you may read it in the chat. It's really interesting. So
Oh, I see. I missed the most interesting part. The chat is going.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I see here. If I say Tobe, I'm sorry if I did mispronounce it. In Kazakh, my first language, I imagine the mountain ranges and tops. That's beautiful. If I say Krisha, which is Russian, my second language, it's something connected with corruption. That's what we were talking about. Yeah, people who are abused. That's, yeah, that taking it one step further. So many interesting answers. Keep your camera on, okay? Yeah, there are lots of, are there any questions though?
Yeah, guys, you can ask questions. So yeah,
Thank you so, yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
Thank you so much. This is great. I'm glad to see all of this.
Thank you very much.
And also, I really like the comment, when you were talking about ladies who are covered, that it's can be difficult to recognize their emotions, but we need to deal with it. And Aigirim also make her comment, she left her comment that during pandemic, teachers face the same situation with the same.
And true. And you realize how much you depend on the facial cues,
Right. I mean, how does it work? From your personal experience, because I can read when I was in Dubai, I understand that I can read emotions from eyes, like from the way eyes moving, and even like a smile you can see there. But how was it for you while you were teaching? It was your first experience.
When we were teaching, we were instructed, first of all, to like culturally female students back then. Right now it's changing a lot, but back then we were asked beforehand if the female students would be comfortable participating in the class conversations and all of that. Most of them were really friendly and not friendly, what's the word? They were more than eager to participate. So they were like, yes, we're okay. We have to work in workplaces alongside with men. So we would be more than happy to learn. So I asked them, would you be okay coming up to the board? And they said, yes, that's also okay. Sometimes you would see female students who would opt out, and that's also fine. And to answer your question, it's mainly the eyes, and they're usually very friendly people. And it's to me now, it's not as unusual to see a woman wearing that burqa. So it's just I just see it as their way of culturally addressing their religion, and then they're very friendly, and they never fail me whenever even if it's a stranger and I'm asking for directions or anything like this, they go out of their way actually to help me.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So, guys, do you have any questions? So if you do, you can leave them because now we're going to listen Aigirim, and then we're gonna have in the end something like a discussion about 5 or 10 minutes where you can ask questions that you forgot to ask. So, okay, it's not a question. Okay, so I think we may continue. Thank you for your speech, Alita. That was really interesting. So, okay, now it's Aigirim's turn. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Shall I start sharing my screen?
Yeah, sure, Aigirim, you're welcome.
Oh, Okay, let me do that now then, and yeah, open my presentation. Yeah, first of all, I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself to introduce myself to you guys. So I'm not like, I don't have as much experience as Alita does. She's absolutely amazing. But yeah, I also have an interesting topic for you guys. Yeah, I have 6 years of experience teaching English in different like situations. I taught English both online and offline, but mostly I do private tutoring. And my formal education is in international relations and international security studies, actually. That is why I wanted to talk about more like social and like cultural things. That's why I really enjoyed Alita's presentation today, because it's really interesting and important to bring it up when we learn the languages through cultures and how we perceive them too. And yeah, I also compiled like 2 interesting facts about me too. So I lived in 3 different foreign countries. Yeah, if I'm not counting Kazakhstan. So it was an interesting experience, and in one of them, in 2 towns actually, I was the only Kazakh person. So I actually had to contact the official Kazakhstani community in Italy, and I asked like, is there anyone like here who can help me find an apartment maybe, because I was struggling to find accommodation for myself. They said, no, you're the only Kazakhstani person in your town, sorry. So yeah, that was my reality. And for 9 months, I haven't seen any Kazakh person actually. And it was a bit strange, alienating, I would say, but it's still a good experience. I think a first Kazakh face at the airport when I was leaving Italy. Yeah, but about today's topic, we're discussing accent stigma, or can accents, certain accents, be stigmatized? But first of all, it's like more of a question to the audience. Do you think you have an accent when you speak English? Like maybe you can just leave something in the chat, like leave a plus or yes or no. Okay, I already like the first one. I do, and I'm proud of it. That's great. That's great. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's good. That's good. I love the answers actually. They're so true. And yeah, the answer is we all do. We all do have accents, because if we look into the definition of the word accent, it's a way of speaking that indicates a person's place of origin, right? So it can be connected to a country, right? To a region, to an area or social class. And sometimes it can be also on like a personal individual level as well. Like you have your own unique accent. But like when someone asks you a question, do you have an accent? They might also have a point too, because when you keep hearing people speaking the way you speak or very similar to you, you perceive it as some sort of a standard, right? So you think, okay, this is the norm, and anyone who deviates from the norm has an accent. So, for example, it can happen in a setting, for example, you're from a very high class society, right? And you only see people from the same circle as well. You hear a certain way of the speech, right? So when you see a person from a working class, for example, in London, there is still like an accent called Cockney, right? Maybe if you guys know Adele, like she is a proud speaker of a Cockney accent. And it actually comes from the working class of London. And the way they speak is very far from Queen's, actually, correction, King's accent, right? King's English. And yeah, you might find it like weird, and you say, well, I don't have an accent. I have a proper English, right? Proper English accent, but they do, which is not really true, because yeah, it's just the way you perceive the world. But yeah, a little bit of a deviation from the main topic, but do you think that your appearance can affect others' perception of your speech? So it's actually in the line with what Alita was saying about people's faces being covered, right? you can't read their emotions, but like in general, do you think that someone's face can affect the way you understand or perceive their speech? Yeah, you can leave it in the chat. Okay. Sometimes, okay, good. So, yeah, let's see. Different accent is not a problem, but wrong pronunciation. Yeah, that's a great point too. Okay, when it comes to the appearance, right? There was actually a very interesting study in Canada conducted by two linguists, Molly Babel and Jamie Russell. They did a matched guy study with UBC, so University of British Columbia students as listeners. So they had as a stimulus several audio recordings of native speakers of English who had grown up in Canada, so it's Canadian English, right? And the guys was two photos. So these are not the exact same photos. I couldn't find them, but one of them was like a typical European looking Canadian face, and the second one was a Chinese Canadian face. And yeah, they played the same recordings to the listeners and gave them these two photos, and they asked them, like, who do you understand better, right? Who speaks more clearly, who has an accent, right? And the results were very interesting and surprising, because the listeners said that like this talker had a stronger accent, but the thing is that the recordings didn't change, right? They're the same. They all speak in the same accent. And they also said that it was more difficult to write down the sentence when they were hearing to a recording while seeing a Chinese Canadian face. So I think it's very shocking, right? How yeah, it's not only the audio stimulus, right, that affects us, but the like visuals too. And yeah, there was also another study which was then called the McGurky effect, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Alita knows about that too. But yeah, actually visual stimulus also affects our perception of the speech. And you might think, why did they confuse it so much when they saw a Chinese face? Well, in some regions of Canada, there are a lot of Chinese immigrants, and yeah, even they make up even more than 40% of the local population. So in everyday life, you may encounter a lot of Chinese immigrants, and they typically have this like Chinese accent when they speak English. So your expectation for the future encounters of a person who looks Chinese, right, is that this person must have a Chinese accent. So you build some sort of an expectation based on your experience, right? So I think that's truly fascinating how our brain tricks us, right? Even though like there is no basis for us to have such a prejudice for the future encounters. But anyways, yeah, this one is actually a clip from one of my favorite TV shows, and it's exactly about the same situation. So let me play it for you. Oh, wait.
Bonjour. Hello.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry. How did you know I speak English?
Have a nice visit.
Excusez-moi. Do se trouve,
What are you looking for? Mona Lisa? McDonald's? Both are that way. Heads up, the portions here are normal size.
how did you know I'm American? Is my accent that bad? We're dressed the same.
There's no reason to attack me.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's not even only about the face, right? Because he also looks European, but it's the way he's styled himself, right? His outfit can also affect people's perception. And this is so true Like, this is so true, like the reality. I just want to ask you guys, do you usually recognize like people from your country when you're abroad? For example, for me, it's not difficult to differentiate between Kazakh people and like, let's say Korean, Japanese, and Chinese people. I would say they look very different, and it's very easy to spot, yeah, Kazakh people. Next one is, yeah, the main question, can accents influence perception? So let's say you don't see the person's face, right? You can only hear them. Can their accent create some sort of a bias? Like, can you kind of, I don't know, create some sort of ideas about this person? How this person behaves. Is this person rude or like educated and nice? I would say for a lot of people, the people who can speak like the King's English, they seem to be like very educated, like well-mannered because of their accent, right? Because it's the stereotype. And it's certainly true. Let's take this quote by an American comedian, and he's from the South of America, and he says, "I used to say that whenever people heard my Southern accent, they always wanted to deduct 100 points from my IQ." Which is, yeah, if some of you guys are not familiar with the Southern US, there is some sort of a prejudice when it comes to that, because they're associated with high levels of conservatism. A lot of people actually voted for Trump from these areas. And they also think that there are a lot of rednecks. So for those who don't know, rednecks are like some sort of a rural type of people who live in the countryside and look similar to this guy. And yeah, and the most importantly, they think that they're uneducated because they're not like really progressive. They don't like want to learn something new, right? And yeah, there is some sort of a stigma when it comes to people from the South. So we can say that their accent is stigmatized. Well, next, how can the stigma affect you? Actually, it can affect you on many different levels. And I've experienced that too while I was living abroad. So you're less likely to get a job interview if you have some sort of an accent. Your boss might not recognize your skills. You might be very much capable, but because of your accent, yeah, they might have some prejudice. It's harder to find a landlord who's willing to rent you an apartment. And that's what happened to me in Italy. They were very, I don't know, like they just didn't want to give these apartments to foreigners because they thought, oh, okay, like, I don't know how they're going to react, right? The safer choice might be an Italian student rather than someone who comes from a country I've never heard about, right? So yeah, and I have another example. This is like a humorous sketch, but there is also like a thing called racial linguistic profiling. So again, you create some sort of ideas about a person based on the way they speak. And usually it was and it still is a big problem for African American English speakers. For example, in this case, let's watch the video first and then discuss.
911? What's your emergency?
Yeah, somebody's just broke into my house.
Okay, we'll get a unit over shortly.
Okay, please hurry.
Real quick, can you verify your race for us?
I'm black. No, I'm sorry, I'm white. I'm full white.
Okay, can you answer a few questions just to confirm?
Okay.
Okay, how do you feel about Black Lives Matter?
All lives matter.
Nice. Did OJ do it?
Yeah, he did it.
Okay, who's the best boxer in the United States?
Jake Paul.
King of R&B.
Justin Bieber.
Okay, last question. Say ask.
X. Oh, fuck. No, hey.
Okay, so yeah, well, it's not really true that 911 discriminates people, but yeah, people who speak African American English certainly do like face some sort of prejudice. And yeah, one of the like specific differences in their pronunciation is the word ask sound the same as the word axe in their version of English. So yeah, I think it's an interesting way to test whether a person belongs to a certain social class or race. Well, yeah, so what's the solution? Like, how can we stop the stigmatization of certain accents, right? Well, I would say it's perceptual adaptation. So the more experience we have listening to someone, the better we understand what they say, and the more we're okay with people. Okay. All right, so the more we're okay, like understanding people. Actually, another example from my experience, I have a student, he's Chinese, but he lives in Australia, and he's been living in Australia for around 20 years, but he still has his very own like Chinese accent. And he shared this really heartbreaking story with me that when he was speaking to people from the emergency room, because his wife was like not feeling well and he wanted to describe like what was happening to her, they really struggled to understand him. So this, again, I'm very happy that it was nothing too serious and his wife is okay. But I think that's a shame that this Australian people, right, the natives to this country, struggled to understand him because of his accent. So I think the more exposure we have to different accents, the better it is. And actually, some studies support this idea. So, for example, let's say you're an L1 English speaker, meaning that English is your native language, right? You've never heard a Chinese person speak, right, with a Chinese accent. So you start listening to them, right? And your level of comprehension of Chinese accent grows little by little, right? The more you have exposure to it. Now then, the more you listen to different Chinese speakers, right, the more you understand them and your level of comprehension is even bigger. But then you start listening to all these different other accents. So for example, L1 Dutch speaker, L1 Chinese speaker, L1 Spanish speaker, and maybe you have never heard the Thai speaker speak English, right? It's a completely new accent for you. But studies have shown that the more you expose yourself to different types of accents, the easier it is for you to understand a completely new accent. So for example, in this case, you might be able to understand a Thai speaker without any problems. So yeah, my verdict is, wait, listen more, first of all. Yeah, listen more, expose yourself to many different people with different backgrounds. And of course, because it's about you, it tells your history, it tells something about your culture, and you just carry all this like background, very rich background with your words. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for listening to me. If you want, you can follow me on my Instagram, and I'm currently working on a course which helps people to understand American culture better, along with the regional stereotypes and accents and a little bit of history too. And I also made sure to include some slang expressions and African American English too, because they have their own unique grammar. And I think it's very interesting and important we know that. Yeah, and if you want a discount for the participants of this webinar only, I have a code accent. So if you'd like to participate, you can like drop a message in my DM with the word accent, and I will gladly share all the information about my course with you. So if any of you guys like have some questions for me, yeah, you're very much welcome to do so. I'm just looking at the chat because I missed like last 20 messages, and I just want to go over them.
I think I scared everybody when I told them, please don't turn your mics and cameras. Sorry, it's also my first Zoom webinar, so I didn't, yeah, I haven't known how does it work correctly. So yeah, now we know. So if you want to ask something, you can ask, you can just turn on your mic, yeah, and that's it. No worries at all. Okay, people are shy. People are shy here.
Yeah, don't feel shy. Please, like, demonstrate your beautiful accents. I'm very much interested in hearing that.
But
I have,
Yeah.
is there, I just wanted to ask, like, it's such an interesting presentation that you shared with us. And it just made me think, the more people you meet, like almost everyone has his unique accent. Yet we all know that the accents, it's just like part of life. And now with AI and ChatGPT, like it's almost like very easy to get a certain accent to perfection if you want to. But then who would like to live in the world without, let's say, Italian accent or Greek accent? It's just such a beautiful variety, isn't it? So how do we go from knowing and accepting that accents are part of life to removing that prejudice and that negative connotation from the accent? Do you have an answer? Maybe just like I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has more to do with racial and like ethnic stereotypes, because the root of the problem is that we have stereotypes, maybe for example, about Italian people, that they're hotheads, right? And they're very passionate. And when they start speaking with their accent in English, we immediately imagine like some sort of an Italian mafia, right? I think the most important thing for us is to, feel closer to the normal people, because Italy isn't filled only like with just Italian mafia, right? There are people just like you, people who think they perceive the world maybe very similar to you as well, and they don't have like, I don't know, something crazy going on in their minds, right? They just have a different way to express it. So I think we just have to educate ourselves more, because we're living in the era of globalization. And I think, we should try to be more understanding of each other, and maybe not be so judgmental on our first encounter with other people. Yeah, and learn about the basics of cross-cultural communication.
It comes back to culture.
Yes, comes back to culture all the time. Yeah.
That's why I combined you here. Yeah, gathered you here.
You're a genius.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just grateful
thank
for
you.
your presentation, because it helped me, you know, like I've texted before, I was, you know, I got used to be shying about my accent. And most of time I was unsatisfied with it. But now I look at this a little bit different. So I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
I'm so
Okay.
happy to hear that.
that's
Really,
great.
thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
hey there. I also want to say thank you for your pitches, and I want to ask you. Some students specifically come to teachers to get rid of their accents. Like, I want to have an American accent or something like this. How to explain this accent situations to the students?
It's a $1 million question.
Yeah,
It is.
I think there is also nothing wrong if they're eager to try to learn a different accent, right? A different way of speaking. I mean, there are some courses that teach specifically American accent, right? Or British accent. And if you really want to do so, why not? I think it's especially good for those people who work in what was that called, like voice acting industry, because they have to be able to speak different accents. Same goes for just like traditional actors. They go through specific training, right? And you see Australian people like playing characters in the US, right? And they speak in American accent. It doesn't mean that you have to lose your natural accent, but if you want to, you can try to learn a new skill. I view it as a skill, so I think why not? Well, yeah, but depends on personal situation. Yeah.
I think it's all. I can't agree more with what Algarim just said, but I think I know exactly what you mean by this question. So many times students would come and be like, "Oh, I really want to get rid of my accent and this and that." I think most important thing there is just to tell them, look, why do you really want to change it? Why are you not happy? Is it a sign of insecurity, or like, why is it wrong to have your accent? And I always tell them there is nothing worse than having this phony fake accent. Like when people try to sound something that they are not, it just puts you off immediately. So I always encourage them, if you want to, of course, you can do all these exercises and you can just do so much to change it, but it doesn't have to be their priority. As long as people understand you. And I would always tell them, look around, all your teachers. We have Mr. Rory from Ireland. It's almost impossible to understand him without subtitles because he has his unique accent, you know. We have an Italian person. We have me, like, so I told him, everyone, you would still have an accent, even if you're speaking in American way or like British way. So it's important to explain to them and just bring that awareness. People will have accents and there is nothing wrong with that. So that's how I tackle that situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this
Thank
is
you
a
for the
perfect
question.
answer. Yeah, but always check the root of the problem, the question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, here, Adil Murad, yeah, you wanted to ask something. You're free to ask. Yeah.
That wasn't actually the question, but there was a little bit of the topic related to the accent. So, in my opinion, there is nothing wrong to have an accent. But here, as a teachers, I guess we need to deal with the pronunciation of some important phrases in the words. And so, if the students will come, we will say, "Hey, okay, you'll anyway will have an accent." But there are some words and sounds that you need to be able to produce so that everybody will understand you and understand your message.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Especially it happens with vowels a lot. Like, for example, in Russian or in Kazakh, we don't have a concept of like short E and the prolonged E, right? The sounds like the difference between this and these, right? So yeah, in these cases, yeah, we do have to explain to the students that there is a right way to pronounce the words and there is a wrong way to pronounce this word, so that they know how to, yeah, navigate the language and use it correctly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I have one thing to add. It's like a theory. I don't know whether it's right or whether it's wrong. But since in Kazakhstan and also in your situation, a little like, oh my goodness. Sorry. Who was Yeah, okay, sorry. So, since we know at least like 2 or 3 languages, yeah, Elita, and here we, everybody, guys, yeah, since we are from Kazakhstan, I think for us it's easier to understand different sounds from different languages and acquire in them, yeah? So, what do you think about this one? Am I right? It's just a theory which pop up in my mind while I was listening.
Yeah, certainly, certainly.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, if you want.
No, please go ahead.
I think it's I don't know if it's theoretically proven or if there is like backup from the research side, but definitely knowing more than one language, if you just think about it, you're exposed to more sounds, vowels, you name it, everything like you try to produce. So it's sometimes in Chechen we have very unique sound like audo, like a fool. Yeah, that's what we were talking. And my Arabic students, they were convinced that I spoke Arabic in class, but I told them I don't speak Arabic. And they would be like, but you know how to say abeid, like not just obeyed like other students, or the deep kh sound, Khalid, instead of
Khalid.
Khalid.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they would be like, and it's only because in my native language I have that sound, so it's very easy for me to produce it.
Right.
So that I'm convinced, definitely. I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of languages which have some vowel sounds, for example, intertwined, like Tatar language and Kazakh. They also have the same vowels, the same sounds. So
I cannot say whether they are the same or not, because sometimes I can understand some Tatar words, but and my friend, yeah, who's Kazakh, yeah, but sometimes we are kind of confused, yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they are like 100% the same, but yeah, there are some similarities, of course. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. So yeah, at the end I would like to say that yeah, I need to give you like a promo code. Yeah, I forgot to make a picture, but if you want to participate in our conference, which happens in August, on 12th and 13th of August. Yeah, so there is your promo code. I will just text it in a chat, and only people who were there can use this promo code. Yeah, which gives you like 15% discount for our conference. Okay, so it's just the easy one. Yeah, workshop. So and I would ask you, maybe we can take a picture, because it's really cool experience. We had a lot of people here, so if you don't mind, you can turn off your camera. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, great. I see that you were in a different places, everybody.
Even
Okay.
better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, guys. So I just give you like 30 seconds. So if you want to share your face, yeah, we can take a picture. If you don't, we also take a picture, but it's all up to you. Okay. So, okay. Guljan, hello. Okay, Arjana. Oh my goodness. I adore seeing like people's faces. I don't know. It's amazing. Like, okay, next time we're gonna use our cameras, okay? So, okay, are you ready? Shall I take a picture?
Sure.
Okay. So, and I will also take a print screen. So, thank you guys for being such a great team today. So I hope that you've learned a lot, and text our perfect speakers, Elita. She's very interesting woman, and Igorim as well. Yeah. Oh, okay. I will take another picture with girls. Yeah, I see you. So, okay. Thank you. So have a nice evening. Yeah, and see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay.
Oops.
I did it again. It's like a song. Okay. Okay.